Hello, everyone, and welcome to SmashBoxxTV podcast 510. Johnny, 510. Not a special number, but here we are.
No, it's not. It's not. And I was going to say, maybe is that the area code in Kansas where you're at? Is that the Emporia?
No.
Is that the address of the Emporia Community Club? Like,
no, Champs Landing. No,
Champions Landing?
No. I don't know. I don't think we got any special ties to 510, but here we are nonetheless. I am in Emporia, in fact, graciously being hosted right now by our friends at Champions Landing. We're in one of the banquet halls, and that'll be a whole nother conversation. We'll dig more into that. There continues to be updates here. But yeah, kicking off the Masters Worlds, both pro and am, a little over 800, almost 900 competitors here today. I got plenty to talk about. And excited to be back in Emporia.
Yeah, it sounds like you've got a lot to do while you're there. You're working with the PDGA. You're doing, I think I saw you do some sort of intro show this morning, and you're also doing some video editing. Is that correct?
Yeah. So yesterday we had a press conference, which was a beefy one. I think when it was all said and done, it was a little over 3 hours. Talked to a ton of great people, including reigning champs and returning champs and hopeful champs and all of that. So I had a pretty beefy press conference. It reminded me of the early days of the Pro Tour press conferences when we had 19 people lined up. So that was good. That was yesterday. We streamed that live on PDGA Media today. Grant Zellner and I did a live show, thanks to Nick and Matt and crew. So everything kicked off and then play started. So good opening day. Like I said, we've got some stats and some standings and everything else that took place today. I'm excited to talk about all of those. But before we get to all of that, you and I can break all that stuff down. Tonight, we've got a special guest. I think he just got done doing some big business, and maybe more importantly, maybe there's a job interview I could line up with these guys. We're going to welcome
Terry.
to the show. Yeah, for you too. We know you need one. For now, we're going to welcome to the show David Hine, CEO of Dynamic Disc. David, first of all, welcome to the show. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. It's great to be here.
Man, we're here in Emporia. You have upended probably your life and transition moving from the Pacific Northwest
Seattle.
to get over here to Emporia. I was just in the Seattle area a couple weeks ago. Beautiful area, but you're in Emporia, and I know I just said one title, CEO of Dynamic Disc, but House of Disc and everything else that's going on feels like it's so much more than that. What other hats are you wearing?
Yeah, great question. And again, thanks for having me, Terry. It's super exciting to be here. So yeah, everybody wears a lot of hats at Dynamic Disc, but House of Disc. So I'm the CEO of Dynamic Disc, which is he's super excited, stoked to be, but I'm also the general manager for House of Disc North America. So all 7 brands under the House of Disc moniker, if you will, under the conglomeration of House of Disc, general manager for North America, based here in Emporia.
Let's start there with the brands and the fact that we see 7 of them. And for so long, it was obviously, unofficially Trilogy. I know that's what the fan base kind of started in seeing, West Side, Latitude, and Dynamic. And then to expand to the 7 brands, how much of a conversation, how long did that take for all of that to officially become a thing?
Sure. Well, I've been with the company for 11 months.
Okay. So even before your time.
Even before me, there was obviously a lot going on. And I think a lot of that had to do with the passion and just the want and need of the owners of House of Disc to really get involved in the sport and continue to grow the sport and support the sport. A lot of conversation during the pandemic and how fast the sport was growing, and the opportunity from where do we take this from here, right? Because ultimately, and you'll hear me say this frequently, you've heard me say this frequently in different places that I've been and different people I spoke to, we've got really 2 big opportunities. That's to get more baskets in the ground and grow the sport, getting more people into the sport. That's what we're all about at House of Disc.
And coincidentally, it seems as if the more baskets that go in the ground inherently, we're going to have more people playing. And we really have to, you're chasing your tail in the sense, too, that if you have more people playing, well, then naturally you're going to want more baskets in the ground, just so that it's a more enjoyable experience for even more people.
Ideally.
Yeah.
Yep.
So constantly having something to chase when we're out there. Now, a week like this rolls around. This is the Masters Worlds. Dynamic Disc has really put themselves in front of the world for the last few years in terms of hosting enormous events.
Right.
Obviously, Glass Blown grew into the ginormous operation that it is.
Right.
And then it really, that kind of helped set and prove that Dynamic could then host bigger events. Worlds in 2016, a Worlds in 2022, a couple of junior Worlds in between those. How in the world does Dynamic then focus on putting on a major like you guys are this week as
Sure.
well? How do you set the day-to-day aside to then do a major?
Absolutely. It all starts with great people. We do nothing without the people when it comes right down to it. Every great brand starts with a great product, and then it's all about the people that support that great product. And I think having experienced my first Dynamic Disc Open just over a month ago, which is, I'm thinking in 6 to 8 weeks, I'm going to start to check boxes like we're past this, we're beyond this. So we had almost 500 players for Dynamic Disc Open, both AM and pros. And it was just a truly extraordinary event. And now we've got this week. I saw my first opening ceremony last night with the Masters Worlds last night at the opening ceremony downtown in our Granada Theater. Almost 900 players coming into town this week. Had a chance to get out here on the course of Champions Landing this week. It is truly an extraordinary event, but the team that brings us together, working with the DGPT, working with the PDGA on both events, I have experienced nothing but passion and the want to, number one, succeed, but the want to truly engage with the people and the players that are coming into town to participate in these events, and the passion around wanting to make sure that they're happy, number one, and that they're enjoying playing disc golf.
And it's funny because both of those things you just said may not be entirely up to you guys, right? Because if you're not enjoying it, well, you probably threw some bad shots or you went out of bounds. You did something. You can disrupt that very quickly. And if they're happy, that kind of goes back to if they're playing well and if they're fully prepared. So there's a lot of components to that. So it's a tall task is what I'm saying. And now that you have experienced the Dynamic Disc Open a couple of weeks ago, and I know we're just one day into the Worlds right now, but you don't have a disc golf background.
I do not.
So which we'll get to in a minute exactly what that was, but right now, what is it like seeing all of us crazy nut jobs that are all about disc golf?
Right. I have never experienced the passion behind anything I've ever done that I've experienced in the last 11 months that I've been here. Just from a true sport and the energy around, number one, the true inviting nature of disc golf and the want and need to bring more people into the sport. Everybody that I've interacted with is not saying, well, no, you're not a great player. I don't want to play with you. No, you don't know how to play. Just, play after me. Everybody I've experienced and interacted with, regardless of where they've been or what they've been doing, wants you to play the sport, right? And that is, in my experience, and been a lot of years in a lot of different industries, that's truly unique. And I think that's what drew me probably more to this than anything.
Well, and funny enough, it's almost a catch-22 because people like Johnny and I, who have been doing this since the 90s, we always talk about growing the sport. Obviously, that was a big hashtag in general, but specifically with Dynamic. And then you turn around and say, well, wait, do we want to grow it so big? I mean, we want to share it with people, but we don't want our courses to be crowded. We want to be able to get the disc that we want. So I think the true passion still ultimately wins in trying to, embrace more people and bring more people in. But the more we grow, then all of a sudden you're waiting on a tee time and it's funny how, if we outgrow ourselves or get so big, it's a detriment to ourselves in some ways. Sure. But I guess having more friends and family isn't necessarily a real problem.
Not a bad thing.
I guess
getting
we can.
People into the outdoors is a good thing.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. So let's back up just for a moment. And like you said, a storied career, but specifically, what were you doing and what were some of the brands, that you were working with prior to coming to Dynamic? And then follow up to that, it already is, how did that make you qualified to come to Dynamic? But you give us a little bit of your professional background.
Yeah. I love the word storied career. I don't think everybody used to refer to that, maybe inside my family. But I appreciate that. Yeah. So most recently I was at a company called Outdoor Research.
Okay.
Technical outerwear. If you're probably familiar with Arc'teryx, you're probably familiar with Patagonia,
Mm.
like brands like that. Outdoor Research is a preeminent brand of technical outerwear and gear. Think Gore-Tex outerwear. If you wanted to go summit Everest, you were probably wearing Outdoor Research.
Okay.
But if you wanted to hike the plains of Kansas, you could wear Outdoor Research. That's really where it felt good and played good from an outdoor perspective standpoint. The cool thing about and I was general manager at Outdoor Research, and the cool thing about Outdoor Research, we also had 3 U.S. manufacturing factories. So what was unique about the brand and what was really interesting of decades worth of work, these 3 U.S. factories made product for the U.S. military.
Okay.
Had the Army cold weather glove contract. So all the members of the Army, and I would venture to guess that a lot of active duty, retired military, reserve military that are on this podcast know OR because it was probably on the top of their glove when they were serving. So we made all those gloves, we made those balaclavas, we made a whole lot of winter gear for the military in factories in Seattle and down in Los Angeles with U.S. workers making product for the U.S. military. So that was a really cool job. Prior to that, I was with a company down in Southern California called 511 Tactical.
Okay.
So tactical gear for first responders. So think paramedics, EMTs, firefighters, police officers. So if they wore it, used it for work, from a outerwear, uniforms, boots, backpacks, any sort of gear, we made the product and provided the product to all those first responders around the world. 90 different countries, multiple retail stores across the United States. Over the course of the 12 years, a little over 12 years I was there, I headed up the sales division as part of the America sales division. I headed up product development and design with, again, a phenomenal team of product development and designers, again, making that product for first responders and a smaller part, but again, product to the U.S. military. So gear and product that you could wear anywhere.
Yeah. Okay. And I was just going to say, you're checking so many boxes that hopefully it makes sense to everybody else, as it does to me when you're talking about the product and development. We're talking about disc and disc golf, things that we're constantly expanding beyond just the actual disc. And we've seen that dynamic. I mean, really was an apparel company in its very earliest of days, working with apparel, selling discs, and then the branding, which was so specific to dynamic way back in, one of the garages or attics of Rusco's, is when that kind of came about. But as you talk about developing that, and then just knowing that you're also working with people that are often outdoors, and that's obviously where disc golf is played. So I see where it's all tying together, and then having the sales and business experience, kind of on top of all of that. So were you headhunted? Were you pursued? Did you? You didn't open a Yellow Pages and say, disc golf and dynamic disc and Emporia is where I need to be. So how did it come about that you were selected?
Yeah, great question, I think, and really came down to, and I was just talking about some of this earlier today. A recruiter called me, and said, "Hey, we've got this opportunity," and I candidly, first couple of times we had a conversation, I'll be honest, and I think your listeners will appreciate this. Your viewers will appreciate this. I didn't know a lot about disc golf.
That's fair.
I may have played, and I kind of gone back. I grew up in the Texas Panhandle, about 7 hours from where we're at in Emporia. There is a course there that's been there for a lot of years. And when I was there, and I did play a lot of years ago, it's just been that, right? This recruiter called me and said, "Hey, we've got this opportunity. They need somebody to come in, really, again, not so much take over for Jeremy, replace Jeremy, as he has recently sold the company and transitioning out of the leadership role and the CEO role into a more founder role, but really come in and business-wise help this company and continue to help this company grow from where it was then and now and has been to really the bigger business that it absolutely can and should be." And then you look at that from an overall House of Disc perspective, and it's one of those times in your life, in your career, and I've had a couple of them, that you say, "Is that too good to be true?" And I can tell you, after 11 months, this is one of those, it turned out to be, nope, it's true. Wow. This is a good place to be.
Yeah. Well, and to take all that, but let's twist it a little in that disc golf is skeptical, or has been. We've never been in a position of this. And I say skeptical when people, even in some people on the board, just in general, when House of Disc and venture capital is, that
Sure.
whole VC idea comes into play on what has been a very grassroots sport. The likes of, our very early people in, your Dave Donapaces and Tim Selinsky's and your Jim Kenners. These are guys that, had some passion in Frisbee, obviously Steady Ed way before that.
Sure.
We've watched this all grow relatively slowly. To us, it, may seem fast, but the sport's only 40 years old, a little more than that. And here we are. And what would you say to anyone that is maybe hesitant or has a sour perception of having venture capitalists come in and then seeing this conglomerate kind of formed? How would you respond to somebody that is kind of used to this family, small grassroots operations that we typically have?
Sure. I think the unique opportunity and the uniqueness of the companies that own us, and keep in mind the founders of many of the companies of the 7 brands that are under the House of Disc are intimately involved in the day-to-day of what goes on, right? This isn't David coming in and changing the world and we're going to go this direction. This is really taking what was built and created, and I truly use the word passionately created, by these founders across, whether it be Discmania or Dynamic Disc or Latitude 64 or any of these brands, truly taking what's been there and been developed and been designed and been brought to this market and this sport that is growing as much as it has, and continuing upon that, right? There's a platform there. There are brand identities across the brands. Discmania is very different than Dynamic Disc. It's very different than Latitude. And we have invested, at this point, I would say the House of Disc has been and will continue to invest more in this sport than any other brand from a big brand standpoint, any other brand that's been out there, right? And that's team player sponsorship and support.
Sure.
That's getting people into the sport from that investment and standpoint. I have 2 what I would consider pillars in success in my roles in CEO of House of Disc and GM in North America for House of Disc, and that is, and I said it earlier, you're going to hear me say this a lot, getting more people into the sport and getting more baskets in the ground, right? And those 2, if we do that successfully, and when I say that to your viewers, I say that to your listeners, we all have to do that, right?
Yeah.
I think there's statistics out there that show 70% of the people that start to play disc golf was because a friend told them, hey, I play disc golf, you should come play with me, right? That's huge. That's probably bigger than any other sport. And the barrier to entry is really attracted me to this business because it is such a low barrier to entry. I mean, I'm playing, right? I mean, 11 months in, I'm getting better. We actually went out and played around out at New Life, of course, here outside of Emporia. There was not a lot of people out there today because everybody else is in town. But to be able to get into the sport and interact with the people that are out there on the course is unlike anything I've ever experienced. And the really unique thing, and I think, and trust me, I read a lot of social media. I read the Reddits. I
check the Facebooks.
I check the Facebooks. You'll rarely see me interact, just because in my position, I'm not ever going to make everybody happy. It's impossible to make everybody happy all the time.
So I've heard.
Right?
So I've heard.
Right? But I think what you'll continue to see is us clearly keep the brand and identities that have been established, that have been built over the decades. And literally 2005, since Jeremy founded Dynamic Disc, or since Discmania was founded, or Latitude was founded in Sweden, Castoplast was founded, Westside was founded, Huck Lab, pick one, right? We're going to clearly keep those brand identities as fine-tuned and platform built as they ever have been. I don't anticipate you'll ever see us cross over from one brand to the next. Do you have the opportunity for our wholesale dealers that are listening, and I'm sure there's some of them, for our retailers that are listening, you've now got one resource that you can order 7 different brands on, well, now 6, because Huck Club, we haven't expanded out too much from a wholesale perspective, but you've got the opportunity on one website to order 6 different brands at one time. Again, that is unique in this industry, from the ability to offer solutions from that perspective.
Yeah, in fact, I said it, I believe, last week, and I'll say it again. I took advantage of just that, being able to log in and make a purchase, pick up some Kristen stuff, but also then go ahead and grab some Castoplast, which I did. I grabbed a few Bergs, and then also picked up a little bit of Discmania. So being able to do all of that, myself as someone who sells discs, not as much as I should, but it was really convenient, and that is great that I'm able to do it. Right. One of the things, and I don't want to keep you too long, especially because we have so much Worlds to talk about as well, that you guys are hosting for us, but you just got out of a meeting. And so maybe, I give us the cliff notes, or maybe even just kind of the premise and who was there, in a sense, an overview of the meeting that you guys just got out of just now.
What's really cool is, again, I keep coming back to the people. No great brand, no great product exists without great people. Truly and foremost, and we are truly a family-oriented company. I am a family-driven company. I think you could walk into Dynamic Disc headquarters right here and right now and ask anybody what is the most important thing that they've heard me talk about, they've heard me speak about, and it's all about family, and it's all about the people. That being said, we've had a number of our European team over here this week from a leadership standpoint.
Okay.
My immediate boss, who stood up on stage last night at the opening ceremonies, Knut Ara, is our CEO of House of Disc. Our CFO of House of Disc is here. We've had all 3 of our brand directors here, one from Europe. Many of you know Austin Montgomery, brand director for Discmania and Huck Lab. He was in here from Colorado, and a number of individuals from a leadership standpoint here over the course of this week. Just really, number one, they wanted to come over and experience the Masters Worlds this week in Emporia. Number 2, it's not a bad place to be. I mean, the sun's going down out here in June in Emporia, Kansas. Not a bad place to be. But they really wanted to come over and experience not only what was going on here this week, but really truly interact from a leadership standpoint. And again, our goals and positions and thought process is really around how do we continue to build upon what's already been built by some tremendous founders and leaders in the sport across the brands that are under House of Disc.
Any exclusives, SmashBoxx exclusive things that we should know that only our viewers will know right now? Any secrets that you can share with us first?
It's all about innovation, right? Coming out with the latest, greatest, best things. I mean, again, as I've been playing the sport, we recently came out with some super lightweight, 120, 130 gram product, and it was cool to me because, again, I don't have a strong arm. I've just been playing since I've been here. It gives me the ability to throw about 30% further than I could a heavier weight disc. Lightweight stuff, it floats. I threw it out here at Dynamic Disc Open at one of our fundraisers on hole 16. Again, went straight out, went straight up, went straight into the lake on hole 16. Great thing is, floated right up to the top and floated right over to the shore.
Perfect.
Right?
Perfect.
So didn't have to go diving for a disc.
Yeah.
But I think you'll see, and again, the unique thing and the great thing about the people that we have in place and the experience that they've got, you'll see us doing a lot more innovation respective to things that are going to outperform what's out there day in and day out from a competitive standpoint.
One of the things, and certainly I don't mean to jump to the negativity, but one of the pieces of feedback that came out recently, people were worked up about Ricky Wysocki's signature disc that was released. It came at a slightly higher price point than what we've seen. I'll skip past that because I think anytime we're supporting our top level players, there's usually a premium to that, and you can argue what that premium should be. My bigger question maybe in that line, though, is some worry that we're going to see disc prices in general creep up and or even maybe take off and get wildly away from where our pricing and our general models are at. Not the general, but we're generally speaking where the models are at right now. Is that something that we should be worried about? Is that a fair concern,
right,
for the consumers out there?
I wouldn't be worried about it. I wouldn't be. That to me is a really strong word. I think we need to be conscious about the environment that we're in. I think we need to be conscious about the last few years from an inflation standpoint. Raw
Mhm.
materials have gone up, labor's gone up. I think everything has gone up in price. I think I will say, and I think we clearly communicated when we have had recent price changes. We try to clearly communicate with our dealer partners and our retailers that we do not take things, especially price increases, we absolutely do not take them lightly. I think what you'll see us continue to do, because we own the factory over in Sweden, so we are basically basically the raw materials, the plastic and the raw materials coming in on one end of the factory and the disc going out at the other end of the factory. That's us. We have the ability to control as much as we can. Reality is we can't control a lot of things, right? We
Sure.
can't control the cost of labor, we can't control the cost of raw materials, but I think what you will continue to see us do is introduce products that continue to keep us in a competitive mindset. And rest assured, I did hear about the Ricky and the General and the price. And like I said, I'm on all the social channels and
Mhm.
I'm following all the feedback and comments. Those do not fall on deaf ears.
Okay.
Just because I don't reply,
Sure.
whys, the what fors, right?
Mhm.
Does not mean that they're not being seen. Does not mean they're being listened to. Does not mean they're not being heard. And we absolutely take that to heart. We want to. House of Disc wants to. I think certainly Dynamic Disc wants to. The general, I think, culture of disc golf wants to continue to offer competitive product at a competitive price. I don't think you're going to see that change at all. And I think I and the team has to be mindful of what the competition's doing as well. Because
Yeah.
this is a pretty competitive
Uh,
environment when it comes to selling discs.
Well, and there's two ways to look at that. I feel like if you guys, as 7 brands, potentially raise prices, one, it could either alienate a lot of your customers, or two, it may encourage your competitors to also raise prices.
Sure.
And then at that point, it feels like the consumers across the board lose out,
Sure.
and the manufacturers win. And I understand there's all these different forces that are pulling on people, but I think those are the two primary ways that it could go. And those are concerns for our players. I mean, as we both know, the barrier to entry to disc golf, finding a course now not as difficult as it used to be 20 years ago or 30 years ago, but getting yourself your hands on an $8 or $10 or $12 disc, and maybe you just get that one or two, but then you have a family of 4. Having that affordable component to disc golf is just overall one of the most obvious draws to our sport.
Sure.
And that's why I think some people worry, and some people just feel like, hey, I own 109 discs, and it's going to be way more expensive if I get to 125.
Right.
Then you may have to figure out where your priorities are. But it's great that you're seeing and you're hearing that feedback.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I think every company is going to continue to do that, and it'll be interesting to see how the entire house of discs jockeys themselves in the positioning against others of these other brands that are still independent in that sense.
Absolutely.
So
well, and again, at the end of the day, because we've got the ability to operate within more than one brand, we have and again, you take that brand identity, that authenticity of what brought these bands to the sport, what continues to make them authentic to the players and the loyal players that each of these brands has. At the end of the day, there will be some price variability between the brands, but
sure.
We want to continue to offer that best solution, not only to the beginner, but the player that's going to continue to play. It was 30. I think we were at $32.99 on the General, and I saw a post that when it landed at the individual's home with taxes and
Shipping
freight and everything, it was $41.
Yeah.
That was probably a little high.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
And I'll be the first to admit there are costs associated with everything we do. But again, we're very cognizant and mindful that we need to continue to be competitive in this market. There's no question about it. And I think that comes back to innovation as well.
Yeah.
And knowing that we own the factory and we control the manufacturing process from literally beginning to end, I think gives us the opportunity, like many of our competitors do, gives us the ability to navigate that probably as good or better than anybody else out there with the brands that we've got under the portfolio.
Yeah, and I will admit that I feel so honored that in one of my brief trips to Sweden a couple of years ago, I got to see some of that factory, talk to, some of the people doing the quality assurance. What blew my mind away at the time was the fact that there were 3 or 4 employees at a table with just hundreds of Frisbees in front of them. And they were one by one feeling and inspecting every single one. And then the recycle bin,
Right.
I also took a picture. I posted on Instagram. The recycle bin was ginormous, which you could say like that goes to that quality assurance and saying, hey, if these aren't good enough products that we want to be putting out there at a retail component, they're getting in and then they're getting recycled and reused. And it was just so impressive. And to see the entire operation from what I did,
Sure.
It was, I wish everybody, could see what they have going on.
Right.
And like you said, the innovation in terms of the machinery. I know there's other, manufacturers, and I've been to a number of their facilities as well, and I can't spill every secret, but it is, there's no doubt that, what the guys at Latitude and then ultimately have been making for all the different brands is just top notch. And it's awesome to see. Well, one of the questions that I now just hit me is can any of that be duplicated, or will it be duplicated and then done here in Emporia? Some of that manufacturing.
Great question. I think yes. The answer is yes. They can absolutely be duplicated for sure. I think the time and investment to go beyond our current infrastructure, it's always part of a conversation that we have from a manufacturing. What makes the sense from a, not only a cost, but should we be making product in the U.S.? I spoke about my earlier job, especially at Outdoor Research, where we had U.S. manufacturing. So I get it and appreciate and understand it greatly. I have a great passion for what we can do in the United States and how we could do it in the United States. Reality is we've got what I would consider, and I'm somewhat selfish about this, I think we've got the best disc manufacturing factory in the world. Bar none. And I have not been in the competition. I have been in a number of factories in my career, whether they were making footwear or bags or apparel. Reality is a factory is a factory. If you're injection molding plastic into a disc, or you're making great pants or great packs or great shoes. I've been in Nike factories around the world, so I've seen great footwear being made. So I do know our factory is top notch and better, again, selfishly, better at it than anybody else. When we hit, and again, we've got so much capacity in Sweden. When we hit the point that we're exceeding that capacity, I think the U.S. manufacturing certainly comes up in conversation again. But we've got to continue to build upon what we've got and continue to build the sport to reach where we're at. We've got a lot of opportunity in Sweden. We can make a lot of discs. Let's put it that way. And you've been there.
Yeah.
I mean, we can make a lot of discs.
I love it. I love it. David, your insight's been incredible. And it's awesome to hear the background and the now newfound passion that you also have for disc golf, which is you've been bit by the bug, and it's great that it remains infectious for so many people, and yourself included. Before I let you go, is there anything that either I didn't touch on or anything you'd like to share with the disc golf community at large?
No, I think first and foremost, I want to thank everybody out there. We don't get to where we're at. We don't sell product without you guys buying the product, being passionate about the product. If you see me out on the course or you see me out and about, please come find me. I'm an open book when it comes to what we're doing and how we're doing. And if I can share it with you, I will absolutely share with it. At Dynamic Disc Open, I had a chance to interact with literally hundreds of players. Last night, seeing almost 900 players at the opening ceremonies was truly extraordinary. And I've had a chance, as we were sitting at dinner at one of the local restaurants last night, I was with the team from House of Disc. Nothing short of probably just right around a dozen people came up and talked to me that I had met over the course of almost the last year that I've been with the team. So my personal thanks to each of you. And I mean that sincerely when I say thank you for continuing doing what you're doing in the sport. Thank you for letting others come into the sport and supporting those beginners that want to start to play the sport, and being so open and just generally want to bring those people and individuals around the world into the sport. I think that is truly unique in this sport, and one of the reasons that I'm here doing what I do, because candidly, life's too short to go through life without loving what you do. And right now I'm loving what I'm doing.
That I couldn't echo that loud enough. As a guy who left corporate 20 years ago to do this crazy frisbee golf stuff, and to have opportunities to sit with people like yourself and then hear the experience, and then also just where disc golf is headed and the trajectory that we're on, I think is absolutely incredible. So, Johnny, I'll get you in there. Is there any follow-ups that I missed or things you're dying to hear? I know you've been hanging out listening in. Anything else that you need to know?
No, not really. I guess the only question that kind of crossed my mind was earlier when you were talking about your history. Do you still have contacts over at those clothing companies that you're gonna tap for possibly some new disc golf apparel?
Yeah, or collaborations or
For
co-branding.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And one that I did mention before 511, I was at a company called Dickies, work close company down in Fort Worth, Texas. Yeah, big. You guys probably all.
I've owned a pair of Dickies
right?
in my life.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was there for a little over 12 years, and absolutely. What's really, I've been very fortunate in my career to have worked with a number of great companies, but a number of great individuals, and absolutely, I don't ever sever ties with anybody that I've worked with. I always reach out, and the great thing about social media, whether it's Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn, it's easy to stay connected these days. So you never know what we may or may not do down the road.
All right. And Johnny, that is such a great question. I think back to a few years ago, we saw Dynamic, partner up with OGO for a couple of years to work on some stuff. And, that was certainly it was great to have a company that was recognized for the excellence that they provide that was outside of disc golf.
Absolutely.
And so having those ties all made sense, and maybe we see more of that moving forward, because when we get some of that, some of those constituents or those consumers and everyone else on board and knowledgeable, like, oh, they're also making products for this silly sport that we're doing, the crossovers become all too obvious.
Absolutely.
So
I love collaborations.
Yeah,
I love great collaborations. Yeah.
All right. Well, we love it too. David, it was a pleasure. We met you at USDGC last year, where we first got to talk to you. That was only a few months into your career here in disc golf. So it's awesome to hear what you've learned and what you've experienced now since last October, now that we're here in June, and looking forward to everything else that all of House of Disc, along with Dynamic Disc and everything else. As Rusko always used to say, we're working on something. And it sounds like you guys are continuing that mantra.
Changed.
Yeah, I love it.
Changed. Absolutely.
All right. Well, with that, I'm going to say thank you for joining us. We're going to let you go. I know there's tons of people in town and lots of obligations going on. So we appreciate you joining us and giving the world a ton of insight as to what's going on over there.
Excellent.
All right. Appreciate it. All right. This is David Hine, CEO here at Dynamic Disc, and we're going to let him go. And have a good night, buddy.
Great. Thank you very much.
See ya. All right.
That's a great
Johnny.
interview. Great interview. Good.
Yeah,
good to learn more about David.
Again, appreciate it, David. All right, we're going to let him go. As we said, he's got tons of stuff going on, and we can get to some of the Masters action that kicked off here today. As we were talking about, nearly 900 competitors, 7 courses, 14 countries. I want to say it was 14 countries represented. Maybe it might even be more than that. I'd hate to sell it short, but lots of representation, needless to say. And funny enough, I feel like half of the international competitors that are here, I've talked to at one point or another, including out of Chile, out of Finland. We had some photos, Germany, Sweden, Estonia. Yeah, I feel like I've talked to a ton of the countries that are here, which Australia, of course. It's been awesome. So
you want to get right into? Should we get right into Masters Worlds? Because it's so. I mean, we've only gone through one round. Let's get that out of the way.
Yeah.
Move on to some of our other events.
Yeah, let's do that. Tonight might be, at the end of the day, might be a little bit on the shorter end of the show. It was great to have David here join us, but we're going to have a long week with lots of good stuff. So we'll talk about everything at the Masters. We'll probably recap a few of the other things that took place in the last weekend, and that may or may not be the end of it. I've got a ton of editing. We've got a bunch of stuff to get done. So. Yeah,
Terry,
let's get after it here,
you need to work on the infinity glove of House of Disc CEOs. Just get them all, rack them all up, get a good interview with every one of them that's there.
That would be kind of cool to do.
All right, let's
We
talk
got
about
Ace.
Let's talk about MP40s right away. We're one round in, and Joe Revere has a 4-stroke lead over the field. Not a huge shock. He's the highest rated MP40 player there. Second place right now, Eric McCabe, tied with Jeff Faze. Faze? Jeff Faze. And fourth place, David Fellberg at 7 under, and Cale LaVisca at 6 under. So those are your top 5 right now in MP40. Joe Revere just, like, as we talked about last week, I picked Cale to edge him out by a stroke, but it's still early. We got a few rounds left, but Joe really putting his foot down overall today.
Yeah, and what I'll touch on, and some of you watched, the numbers would say you didn't, but some of you watched the press conference. So to rehash a few things from there, Joe talked about overthrowing and playing too much here in the last 12 days that he's been here practicing and hanging out. And he said that his shoulder may only be around 60 to 65% physically. He said mentally he's 90 to 95%, but his shoulder and physical health in that capacity is only at 65%. So if he said that on Monday, and then Tuesday goes out and shoots a 12 under 1071 rated round, yeah, what does he look like at 80 or 90 or 95% physically? I don't know. But
yeah, that's a great question. I don't know.
Yeah, pretty impressive to see what he did out there today. And like you just said, a couple of the other contenders, no big surprises there, with McCabe shooting an 8 under, unofficially rated 1045 with Jeff Faze, and then rounding out that lead card for second round will be Fellberg, who is one off of second place at 7 under. So I'll just throw it out here now, and I'll probably say it again before the show's over. Gatekeeper and their crew are capturing the action on the MP40 side and then working to get it edited and released next day. That will be on the PDGA Media page of YouTube. So PDGA Media, like youtube.com/PDGA Media is where you'll find that. And then I saw them just step in a minute ago. Ace Run is capturing the FP40 action, and same thing. They'll put it all together. I think we'll have Grant Zellner and maybe Jennifer Allen doing the commentary, and then that also will be released PDGA Media. So just wanted to make sure everybody knows you're going to look for it, and you're going to hear those two teams. They're the backbone, but it's all going to be released in that capacity on the PDGA Media page on YouTube.
And maybe he needed a little bit more of a bump from us, but Dana Vici, good friend of the show, 9th place currently at 4 under, so he's 8 off the pace as we speak. But again, we got a lot of rounds. Maybe if Joe Revere starts, dipping, only getting to those 1060 and 1050 rounds, everybody else will have a chance. Let's talk about MP40. Is this one already over, Terry? After the first round where they played at Swope Park, Ohn Scoggins with a 6-stroke lead over Jen Allen. She's at 9 under. Jen's at 3. What was her first round was rated a 10-11.
10, yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, 1011. So there's one of the biggest stories of this entire week for sure, and I alluded to it earlier, is just the fact that there was a lot of adjustments made due to the weather. Friday night, a nasty storm rolled through town. I was out there watching it from my car, and I was actually parked under an underpass or overpass, whatever, awning, because I was worried about hail. And I was like, I don't need to claim a rental car for hail damage. So I actually happened to be outside at midnight or so, and had moved the car accordingly. So they had that on Friday night. On Saturday night, more rain came through. Another nasty storm came through. And with that, that's created a ton of flooding. And some of the courses most of the areas are dry enough to walk through, but there's other places where it's just simply impassable. And I think of hole 18 out at Peter Pan today, for instance. The hole is underwater.
Yeah.
There's other holes that are underwater, just standing water. We're talking about 2, 3, 4 feet high in terms of the water. And so they had to ultimately move 6 either tees and or pins for 6 of the holes at Peter Pan. And then they had to move 7 of the holes teaser pins or both at Olpe out there today.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what's playing into some of this. And I believe we also saw at Swope Park, there was some adjustments made out there. That course was already on the slightly shorter side of things when it was all said and done. And so I think a few adjustments were made out there as well. I don't know if there's many out there, but there definitely were a few adjustments that had to be made to a number of the courses. So that is, unfortunately, that's kind of, pardon the pun, that's stolen a lot of the thunder here of the start of this Worlds.
But
is people
dampening on something?
Yeah, it's kind of rained on our parade, so to speak. It's just, it's just been a real Debbie downpourer. I don't know. It really, nobody loves it. Like, you go out, especially when people are out here for some of them a couple days or a week in advance playing the course, and then to show up to the players meeting last night and be like, hey, we've tried all the draining. We've tried to do everything we can to reroute water, and we've done these things. You cannot play in some of these particular spots. And you're talking about 7 courses. We already know that it's a massive undertaking for all these people, but it's not like you can just say, oh, well, we'll just go to another course. Well, if there is another course, it's probably already in play and being used by another division. Not that it necessarily would be appropriate anyway for, certain divisions and certain skill levels. There's no winning scenario here. And there's some undue frustration. Has everything been perfect? No, not necessarily. Have there been calls or decisions made that you're not going to like? Yeah, of course, because everyone has a different opinion as to how it should get handled and or what then specifically should be done. Someone could say, well, they moved this tee or they moved this pin, and why didn't they put it here or why didn't they put it there? I mean, when are we not going to have that argument?
Yeah.
So
and we've seen this before at the
unfortunately
GBO.
Is some of that.
We saw this at the GBO at one year when it got rained. Peter Pan had to be, I think it was Peter Pan that had to be adjusted and moved around.
It was.
And just, this is the nature of the beast. I mean, you're never going to get perfect weather every weekend. It sucks. We've heard complaints about the tour going through the Midwest in the spring. Then you go out to Portland and it rains in Portland a lot, and it's maybe they've got better
we started
drainage.
We started the tour in Florida, and then everyone in Arizona said, "Ha ha! I told you," and gave the double middle fingers, and said you guys should have still had the tour start here. I mean,
exactly.
But we've also been in Vegas when it freaking snowed on us.
When it snowed on us, exactly. So you can't win. And Webb Warren says on their board says it was a ton of rain, and the staff has done wonders to keep the disruptions to a minimum. That's the way you need to look at this, is that the staff out there is doing their best, and it sounds like they're doing a pretty damn good job with the circumstances they've been given. So huge shout out to them. Can't really argue. But let's talk a little bit. As we said, Jen Allen, second place by 6 strokes, tied. Kari Teku? Did I massacre that?
Kari Teku?
In tied for second as well at 3 under, then Sandy Hendel at 2 down, Stephanie Vincent 1 down, and Ellen Wid to the boom at 1 under. So that is your FP40 after a single round. We'll go through some of these really quick just because we don't need to dig too far into some of them. MP50, Schwebe comes out with a 10 under, leading by 2 strokes over Sergio Celis and 3 strokes over Barry Schultz. Jay Yeti Redding sitting there in 4th, tied with a few other people, Chad Larson and Matt Peckham. So that one's still pretty close. Anything can happen with those MP50 guys. FP50, JK,
real
Julian
quick,
Corver.
let me just say this.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Real quick, because clearly you put Schwebe, you put Schultz, you put McRae, 3 that you would set out as front runners. I'm sorry if that offends anyone else, but those are 3 of the greatest of all time, and you put them out there as front runners. How crazy is it to see a Brian Schweberger goes 7 under in the front 9, Schultz goes 8 under in the front 9, Johnny McRae goes 2 under, and then obviously picks up a few of them in the back. I just have to say this. I played the Kansas course, the Kansas View course, and the front and the back, like some have said, feel like 2 entirely different courses. I'm so excited to watch and even just look at the scores. The top 4 or 5 guys have about 50 birdies in the front 9, and then collectively have about 15 in the back. And so that also will tell the story of what I'm saying. So many birdies in the front, so much more difficult in the back, and difficult more so to just even keep it in bounds. That's actually the big factor there. There's some very narrow fairways, and I'm interested to see how that shakes out throughout the rest of the weekend, just due to the change in course. We saw Schultz this morning. He was one of the earlier cards in that division. He was 8 under through 9. We're like, okay, well, he's shredded. And then to see him pull back on the back and find some of that trouble that we talk about. Meanwhile, Schwebe had an almost equally as hot start, but then handled the back 9 so much better. So, a little more insight just because I played that course, and it was very crazy to see. And I'll move us right into FP50. During the press conference, we talked to Juliana, we talked to Des. It was funny to hear how similar some of their responses were. To our shock, in the middle of the round today, as I was checking scores, I saw that Des had DNF'd. So hopefully everything is okay. Clearly it doesn't appear to be from frustration and throwing strokes away, as she was, about par? I think she was exactly par. Juliana went on to have the hot round at 5 under, but looks like she played through 13 holes. I didn't get a chance to see her today, but clearly I hope that she's all right. And I'm guessing that has to be some form of injury related to have her stop 2/3 of the way through the round. So JK right now is your leader at 5 under. Valerie Steinbaum at 4 under, and Nova Polite and Kimberly Gianola are tied at 2 under. So that is your FP50. I'll head right into MP55 quickly. Simon Feasy, the Kiwi, one of the owners over there at RPM Disc from New Zealand. He also got off to a great start. Him and Kevin Babbitt are tied for the lead at 5 under. Hank Kerwin is at 3 under. Patrick Brown is at 3 under as well. They played the Kansas course. Same thing. Look at that scorecard on PDGA Live. All the birdies picked up in the front, and then you just run into the absolute gauntlet that is holes 10 through 13, and you see where the scorecard was like, hey, simmer down. You're not going to shred this entire course. We'll head over to FP55. Elaine King, great to see her out playing here at the Worlds. Did great throughout the entire round, actually, as she played over at Swope Park. She shot 7 under out in front of Karen Sattler and Kiersey Kaikanon, we'll go with, and Corinne Falcone. There's a 3-way tie for second, but Elaine King out in front handedly right now by 5. MP60, I got a picture with Dean Tanak yesterday. It was great. Michael Paulette, Doug Williams, Tim Keith, James Elkin, Eric Rainey, and Will Rosa, all sitting behind Dean Giamotes right after that. FP60, Amy Schiller picked up more birdies than the rest and shot 4 over. She's over Sue Perales and Andy Young. Peggy Berry rounds out the 4th on the card. Jeff Witt is your leader right now over Jay Gary, along with Kenny Lee and Mike Ward and Ted Mowens in your MP65. They also played Swope today, so 10 under was the score that was set. There you look at the course, and you see most of the blue starts on a very soft hole 8, apparently. And then as you scan over, it's almost all blues in the back. So a little tougher on the front, more difficult on the back. Janice Jones is sitting at 5 over, is your current leader in FP65 over Kathy Catnip Hardiman. I don't know.
I've never seen the catnip recently. One, but okay, Kathy.
Yeah, we saw Kathy. Lori Chloe Chupa out of Las Vegas. Got to talk to her. She's sitting in 3rd place, and Tita Ugalde sits in 4th place. Sue Horn, PDGA number 68. Tita Ugalde, PDGA number 83. Nice. Incredible. Lori, 6169. So Levon Wolf, Hall of Famer, all-around great guy. I think he's PDGA 588. I think he's beating PDGA 299. Let me click. Yeah, Harvey Brandt, PDGA number 299. Ron Rice, Randy Beers, and Ron Egger Bredston, all sitting tied for second. So
and then David,
a very close battle.
David Greenwell,
David
PDGA
Greenwell right
number
there.
962.
And then Mark Horn, Susie's husband, is PDGA number 67. So
it's amazing some of these guys that are playing MP70 that I watched play MPO. So
yeah, and Neil D'Ambra, if you scroll down a little bit, PDGA number 200, if I recall. Yeah, there it is, not number 200. So I'm going to get footage of that card at some point this week and make some post-production just as I did last year. And then what might be one of the craziest scoring updates after one round.
I see this.
Jack Gilmore, Pete May, Carlos Rigby playing MP80. All three of them tied at 12 over after one round. All done somewhat differently, but no birdies were had, but all three of them tied up at 12 over. Carlos Rigby, remember everyone? Last year, he didn't have competitors, so he recruited his brother and signed him up for the PDGA, his brother who doesn't play disc golf, and then recruited another guy to come play as well. The other gentleman didn't quite make it through the first hole, and then was like, yeah, I think I'm done. I've had enough. Carlos would then go on to defeat his brother and collect another world title. This year, a three-way tie after
more
one
competition
round.
there, Carlos.
And everyone's still playing. So
that's always,
what a story.
Always a good one for MP80.
I talked to Carlos last night at the player check-in. What an incredible spirit and just all around great guy. So very fun. All right, Johnny, is it our due diligence to run through? I'm going to run through your leaders quickly on the AM side, just the leaders. So if you're not in the lead,
make
I'm sorry, you don't get it. MA40, Matt Schlebach tied with Daniel Schnabel. FA40, Sophie Stevenson after one round. MA50, Eric Treblehorn. FA50, Michelle Swan. MA55, Kimo Rohinanen. Yeah, Kimo out of Finland. Angie Jones leads FA55. MA60 goes currently to Ron Smith. FA60, Madeline Shepley. MA65, George Bodoroga, who won AM Worlds last year, either in 60 or 65. George, it's time to move up. I'll say it. Subi Land is leading right now. She's at 6 over in FA65. Mark Hauser has won a few world titles in AMs and is ready to move up. Mark, come on. He leads MA70. His rating would suggest that would happen. And Jeffrey Brown is leading MA75 at 4 over. So those are your leaders. We're one day in. I'll have more for you later in the week, but those are your leaders. So many incredible people. All right, Johnny. I don't want to beat it to death. Weather clearly Friday and Saturday night helps reset the stage for this weekend. Hopefully we have the hottest of hot days is tomorrow, and then I think things will still be hot but not as hot, and just fingers crossed that we don't have any other weather or delays or any other things that we really have to deal with over the next few days. So I'm looking forward to it. And Webb Warren, who's out on the board, like you said, also sharing a hotel. It's so funny. Everywhere you go, you run into somebody, whether it's at the hotel, the Walmart, the ice cream place. It doesn't matter. There's golfers everywhere. The new head chef here, I think his name Miguel. I saw him just before we started tonight, and he goes. I introduced myself because I knew he just came on as the new head chef at Champions Landing, and he said, "I think, yeah." He goes, "Yeah, we've got pictures. I get a picture with you every time when we're at Bourbon Cowboy." Of course, I remember that, Miguel. Of course, I do.
Terry's like, "What do you mean? I've never been there. That must be a different
the chef
guy.
special." Yeah. So, yeah, so that's about it. Let's talk what Disc Golf Pro Tour this last weekend.
We'll talk Disc Golf Pro Tour, then we'll roll right
there.
over into the US AM Championships real quick, because
Yeah.
I know you were out there, weren't you?
No,
I
was
thought
here.
Oh, that's right.
No?
I thought you went out there. Anyway, let's talk about Beaver State Fling over on MPO. An exciting final round in MPO. Gannon Burr wins by one single stroke over Ezra Robinson and Ricky Wysocki. Gavin Rathbun in fourth, tied with Calvin Heimberg. Kyle Klein in sixth. Seventh place, Nicholas Antala and Gavin Babcock. Ninth place, Luke Taylor, Casey White, Luke Humphreys. Now, Ezra had a chance to tie it on the final hole. Like, it, with a couple to go, I kind of thought, well, I think this is over. Like, I'm in the control room and we're looking at it, like, we're getting to about hole 16, and I'm thinking, all right, well, Gannon's probably going to wrap this up. He needs one or two birdies, probably just one birdie in the last three holes, and I think he's kind of got her under control. And he goes par, par, par to close out that round, while Ezra gets a single birdie to get him within one. And then on hole 18, Gannon makes like the one mistake you can't make on his second shot and goes right into the bush. There's one big bush guarding where the basket is, and he tries to go up and around it and just miscalculates and throws it into the middle. And meanwhile, Ezra has the most perfect drive. He was right in the sweet spot of where you want to be. He was kind of off to the left side. He didn't even have to go around the bush. Ezra then has to, on Ezra's second shot, throws it, goes past the basket by about 40 feet. Gannon, on his second shot, went in the bush and was able to get through it with some sort of tomahawk pancake, something to pop out and put himself under the basket for a par, while Ezra had a chance at a birdie. Ezra had been putting pretty well and just couldn't complete the 40-footer, which is, it was, an elevated basket, but a little surprising at how, and again, it's hard to be a judge on this side, but how poor the putt was. He airballed it. He missed it. From 40 feet, you just don't expect that. There's a lot of nerves there. There's a lot of excitement. I'm not going to fault the guy for it, clearly. But he just, I don't feel like he took enough time. And I know he's a Robinson and they're a little snappy when they throw. But for being such a good long-distance putter as Ezra is, to not really draw a medal, it just was a little heartbreaking, because we all wanted the excitement. Well, that's not true. Nobody in the control room likes a playoff. We all know that. But the excitement is there for a playoff, and Ezra just couldn't complete it. And you could see it after the round. We were sitting there waiting to close out the show. Gannon had already done his interview, and he was talking with some people. And I look at my cameras. I see all 6 cameras, and there I see Ezra. Like he looks defeated. Like he looks like he'd been crying. And I'm not. I have no judgment on that, man. That's a tough spot to be. And then he walks over and gets a good brotherly hug from Isaac. And normally I'm the kind of guy who right away is like, yes, let's put that on air. That's what I want to see. Too often we see these guys that, like, if they're not going to win, they don't care. You see Ricky. If Ricky loses by a stroke, he's not, defeated. He doesn't feel, like he's going to go off and have a moment. But some of these guys still do. And some of these guys really want it bad. And I love to see that. But I had second guessings about showing it, but I was overruled, which probably for the better, honestly, in this case. I think the right decision was made to show it. And there was Ezra, who just looked like he really wanted it, and then wandered over by his brother. And so it's good to see. To me, it's good to see these guys. Some of these guys still have that passion. Because again, if Gannon loses like that, he's got the victories under his belt. He knows he's going to be back there.
Exactly.
Ricky, the same thing. Calvin, the same thing. Kyle, probably the same thing. But there's a few guys up there at the top. Ezra and Gavin, I think it means more to them. And, we had just talked with Ezra a few weeks ago It was, I think, no doubt he's going to get one. It's just a matter of time. He's too good not to. But to not get it here probably hurt a little bit more. So, and that was kind of your MPO in a bucket. Gannon had an awful first round and ended up with 2 really good second and third rounds. Calvin came out screaming hot in the first round, was right there for the, he was tied for first place going into the third round and just couldn't. He started out with some early bogeys, a double, a single, and then 2 birdies. But to be 1 over going into basically the back 9, or going into the 9th hole, technically, it wasn't enough. He needed to more or less run the back 9 in order to have a chance to win, and he just clearly couldn't do that.
With me not seeing any of it, was there anything that jumps out at you when?
No, just a
when
little
we
bit.
See such a collapse, so to speak.
No, just a little bit off that front 9. He just that's all it was, just a little bit off, and it wasn't a collapse. It wasn't anything. He just wasn't on his game. He shot a 1033 rated round and just couldn't get it done. I will say though, it sucks for Ezra, but Gannon, he had 2 phenomenal breaks, like saving him multiple stroke breaks. There's a small little hole, I think it was hole 14. I'm sorry, it's 13. Hole 13. It's the one that Holly Finley aced.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry. It is, I think, the next one. Either way, because it wasn't the 197 one. The 197 one. He threw such a piss poor shot that ricocheted off a tree on the left-hand side of the fairway, kicked him straight right about 150 feet and almost aced the hole. It was the worst shot. You could see the minute he let it go, he was like, ugh. Gets a kiss off a tree, almost aces the hole, ends up with a drop-in birdie. Ezra got his birdie as well there, but he actually had to struggle when he threw an okay shot that made it over the big protective bush and put him in the backside of it where he was fighting his way out and just hit a really solid, what appeared to be about a 25-foot putt through I don't want to call it a tree, but through a low-hanging, whatever it was a bush or a tree, but either way, phenomenal. And there was one other break that Gannon had gotten on that round that really kind of solidified that, some days it's your day, man, and some days there's not much you can do, but just, I've seen Gannon get some bad breaks on the basket at times, but I don't know if I've ever seen someone take that good of a break on a hole like he did. So shout out to Gannon. I mean,
like you said, you got to take advantage of it.
100%.
Some days,
100%. Then we go over to FPO, the actual more exciting of the 2 events. You would think that with all that went on in MPO, that would be the exciting one, but no. We had a playoff in FPO. And getting her first Disc Golf Pro Tour win, Holyn Handley. Holyn Handley, in epic fashion, birdies the last 4 holes to catch Ohn and go into a playoff. And the most epic putt, the one that you're going to see on every Disc Golf Network commercial for the next 3 years, is Holyn Handley on hole 18 draining a 45-foot putt on an elevated basket to push it to a playoff, and just the excitement you could see. She was ready. She was good to go. I not only I did, but the control room, we all wrote her off after hole 14. I think we even played what we called the bad Holyn package. We usually have a good and bad package for most players. We had the bad Holyn one because of what she had done. She parred 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 straight holes and then bogeyed 14. And she just looked flat. Nothing was going her way. She just kind of couldn't get things going. And at that point, everyone in the control room is like, all right, yep, let's roll it. It's another Holyn Handley disappointment on the final round, blah, blah, blah. And then Ohn, going into hole 17, does the one thing she couldn't do. She had a great drive, and she was kind of down in hole 17, Terry. It's the one with the Beaver State with the road and the tiny island.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, they
Yep.
don't play to the tiny island. They play a little short of that.
Sure.
But
yeah.
so she's off to the right. She's got to cross the road. She's lower than the other side of the road. She goes to throw a forehand, throws it literally into the. I mean, it's a typical thing that Ohn would do, but normally she does it on the drive where she kind of overturns it. She threw it straight into the ground in front of her, like 50 feet. It kicks or it rolls straight right out of bounds. Boom. There's your 6. At that point, we're all in shock, and Holland just, she putted lights out those last few holes. She got everything she needed to, and like I said, went birdie, 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 birdie to push the playoff. Then they get to the final, obviously the first playoff hole where Holland is able to take a birdie on it. Ohn, they play to it's what hole 16 is. They play, it's a par 4. Stockheiser shot on the first shot. The second one is the most difficult one. Ohn was just out of position behind some trees. Couldn't get up and down. I think she knew she couldn't get up and down. She laid it up, hoping that Holland would maybe miss her 25-footer. Didn't happen. Holland hit it pretty solid. It was a little bit left. It looked like it was a good putt. If it would have spit out, I wouldn't have been shocked. But ultimately, it was like 90% in. Maybe a 10% chance of it coming out. So, and Holland just walks away with the win. Huge celebration. FPO's going nuts. Obviously, all our friends are there. It was a great moment. And it was a really nice way for Holland Hanley to kind of get the monkey off her back for multiple things. Not just a win, but a win in the fashion she did when she has so frequently. We ran the graphic 2 or 3 times about how her final rounds have all been worse than her other rounds. She plays better from the chase card. On the chase card, when she's playing really well, she ends up averaging 4th place, so she moves up. When she starts on the lead card, she ends up playing poorly, averages down to about 4th place. So no matter where she was, she kind of always kind of found that middle ground in 4th place. So the fact that Holland was able to do it in this fashion, just amazing. And you could tell, Ohn was just Ohn. She was excited and happy for Holland. Clearly, I'm sure she wanted it as well. But, you never saw an ounce of regret on Ohn's face. So you can't argue with that. Probably one of the better battles, one of the better back nines we've seen on the FPO this season, which is saying a lot. So,
yeah. So congratulations, first and foremost, to Holland Hanley. Like you just said, to not only get the monkey off her back, but what an exciting way to go about it. And it's also almost cliche at this point to just talk about how revered and loved and beloved that entire property is and what it means to people, and often just Oregon gets referenced, but then we see Beaver State Fling and Milo McIver specifically as a course and as a place, just how revered it is. So congratulations to her. Ohn, to follow that up, does that, and then from what we had heard, catches a red eye on Sunday night so that she can then fly into Emporia so that she can start Masters Worlds, which, flipping this on its head for just a moment.
Can't stop, won't stop, Terry.
No, and even just before the show tonight, I briefly reached out to Ohn, seeing that she had, had obviously a great weekend, but then was leading here after a great day today, 1,011 rated, leading by 6 strokes after her round today. And I said something about stopping by if she was interested. And she said, sorry, I'm also heading over to Peter Pan to check out the course because we haven't played that one yet. Okay. I made the joke earlier today, and she's old enough, and a few of us are old enough to get the Energizer Bunny references, because that's exactly what Ohn is. There's never a downtime moment for her. So for her to not skip Beaver State Fling, which would have been 1,000,000% expected and or normal for her, or practical, for her to not skip it and then to come here to then quickly get out there and now leading after the first round, I don't see her slowing down. Peter Pan certainly is a course that it shouldn't be a big challenge for her. Not to say, others can keep up with her, but it's not going to be exceptionally challenging for her either in her skill set. So just so huge in what we're seeing. But yeah, certainly all the shine and the accolades to Holland Hanley for pulling off that event.
It's one of those ones, Terry, where I know you're not the type of person that goes back and watches post-production, but it might be worthwhile to go back and watch the back 9 FPO. It might be, Holland hit some great putts. Ohn, as always, like throughout the entire event, Ohn was drained. I mean, no shock. She was draining things from all over. It was so much fun to watch. Like it got to the point where, like, when Ohn walks up to a 50-footer, in my mind, I think, okay, 50-50 chance, which I think is still pretty good for a 50-footer. Like,
damn good, yeah.
It was to the point where it was like 80-20. I'm thinking, like, she's got this. She's hitting everything. She hit such miraculous putts. Like, at one point, she hit, I think she hit like a 45 or 50-foot uphill putt with a tree kind of in her way a little bit. Like, Ohn's putting is amazing, miraculous. I would put her in the top 5 putters in any division. I don't care what it is, MPO, FPO. She is so good. She is so good that it just doesn't matter. So we'll talk about some of the other. Go ahead.
Yeah, with her being good though, real quick, how exciting! Just knowing that there's not a putt within, we'll say, 60 feet that you count her necessarily out of, and just what that does for the fear factor for the rest of the card, the fear factor for the rest of the division, and then just the excitement level for all spectators to think, oh yeah, she could hit this. Like, as you were just saying, whether it's 80-20 or 50-50, whatever, you're not doubting the possibility whatsoever of her connecting from way downtown, and just knowing that that's always still lurking. It's in her back pocket more than any other.
As a competitor, that's got to suck.
Yes.
You never know if you're going to get a stroke on her.
You're never thinking, well, Ohn's over there. I should pick up unless she's thrown out of bounds and or has no weight of the basket. That's about the only time you can even think about, well, maybe I'll get one on her. Because if you're within that 45, 50-foot range, we'll give her that range frequently, that 45-foot range, you're just thinking, oh yeah, well, Ohn could make this, or Ohn might make this, or Ohn should make this, or Ohn will make this. However she's putting that day, it's insane. I think it just provides so much more excitement for everyone involved. Mm-hmm. Maybe not our card, a nervous excitement for the card mates, but it's there. It's always lurking. I love
it. Ed Root asks,
all right, yeah, recap.
I say Ed Root quick asks, is it greed for Ohn, or does she really want to win everything? I said she really wants to win everything. She's such a competitor, and I think she understands that coming into the game as late as she did, she only has so much time to be able to still compete with these women. So she might only have another 6, 7, 8 years that she can compete in FPO, but and
then she'll go destroy every age-protected division.
She will. It's disgusting and so much fun to watch. So Ohn is the competitor's competitor. She is. Yeah. She wants to win at everything. She wants to beat you, and then when she does or doesn't, she wants to be the first to give you a hug. So that is the epitome of a great competitor, and that's what Ohn is. So we'll talk a little bit about some of the other division in FPO. Natalie Ryan takes 3rd place. Natalie was 1 stroke out of the lead going into the final 9, and her putter failed her. You could see she just wasn't hitting. She wasn't hitting a couple lines, and she was missing some putts. Just not enough to be able to keep up with Holland and Ohn. 4th place, Missy Gannon, shooting a 4 under par that round. So she shot decent with an eagle, but unfortunately just couldn't. Again, she couldn't make up the ground. She would have had to shoot a 9 under, which would have been, I think, a FPO course record out there in order to catch Holland and Ohn. 5th place, someone who was in the lead at one point, Rebecca Cox. She was in the lead after the first round, I believe, and just kind of petered out a little bit, just kind of came a little bit down based on her rating. She's still, her last round was a 973, shooting above her rating, but not enough to be able to keep up, unfortunately. And Rebecca is one of those names that we keep talking about week after week. Mm-hmm. That's in the top 10, and my understanding is she hasn't missed top 15 this year yet. So
Wow.
yeah, so and for her to take 5th out here is awesome. So congratulations to Rebecca Cox. I hope she keeps it up. Her most of her game is looking really good right now, so it's fun to see. Valerie Mondahano, former champion of this event, she took tied for 5th with Rebecca, and Valerie shot a 3 down that round. So just not, again, they were, unfortunately, some of these women were just already in a hole that they couldn't catch, so they were kind of just jockeying for position, who's going to take basically 3rd or 4th down to about 8th, and that's where it was. Stacy Kiefer in 7th place, Emily Weatherman in 8th place, shooting what I believe was the hot round at a 6 under par, a 981 that round. So congratulations to Emily, tied with Rachel Turton, who was also shooting really, really well up in, she had 1 or 2 little blips, but otherwise another top 10 for Rachel, and a big tie for 10th place between Luque Lorenzen, Lisa Fakis, Stacey Ronsley, and Anniken Sten. So congratulations to everybody, because it was a fun battle.
Heck yeah. Well, I am disappointed that I'm not there, but when I'm trading that off for being here for what would have been the field events and what ultimately was also the doubles and prepping overall for this week, I can't complain too much. But it sounds like an incredible time up at the Beaver State Fling. Nobody really surprised by that when it was all said and done. So, and then there's a major taking place as well on the AM side. I heard that too was a very intense battle, as you would expect.
I wrote it off. I literally, Terry, I'm not kidding. I'm producing Beaver State here. I'm right in this seat. I'm hitting the button, switching. And at one point we go to a commercial and I'm like, oh, that's right, AM Nats is going on it. And for some reason in my head I thought you were there, which is why I think I had a little more interest in it. I'm like,
it's not the dumbest assumption.
No, you've been there.
You've thought dumber stuff.
I've thought dumber things, and you've been there before. And in my head, I was thinking, all right, odds are, Terry, I know you're going to Masters Worlds, but I thought, all right, Terry's probably going to catch something Sunday night from there to Kansas City and then drive, whatever. But I looked, and Lucas Carmichael had a 3-stroke lead, with 3 holes to go. And I thought, I was like, okay, this is over. Lucas is clearly shooting well. I mean, all right, that's kind of it. And I closed the tab and I got back to the production because we were out of commercial. I never thought anything about it until yesterday morning. And I was like, oh, let me, how did it end up? Who took 2nd and 3rd? And then I was like, holy crap, Ryan Mon won.
Mm-hmm.
How does that happen? And then I looked and I'm like, ooh, Lucas. Just those last 2 holes just killed him.
Yeah, sounds like a 3-putt, and then also some struggles keeping it inbounds on the 18th to ultimately let it go. And Ryan Mon, you could say Lucas lost it, and you could also say Ryan Mon was right there, ready to pounce and ready to. I mean, he put himself in a position to be a contender, and by Lucas slipping up, Ryan said, "Hey, I'm ready to rise to the occasion." So. Congrats to him, and still obviously a hard-fought battle. And if you want to say it was 52 holes of incredible play or whatever the case might be, but a great battle nonetheless. And I'll go ahead and just throw it out there that there were media crews and staff and the PDGA and some of those I was going to call them assets, but the PDGA people, assets, marshals, whatever, all of those important people working there, and then knowing that Worlds was taking place here, and then DGPT is doing, DGPT things out there at Beaver State. Just overall busy weekend, and if your attention got pulled or not pulled in a certain direction, I can totally understand that. I mean, I kept a wandering eye on those other 2 events that you just mentioned because I was already here in Emporia and fully submerged in everything. Again, almost literally submerged in everything going on here. So it's a lot. I feel like we could have a podcast on all 3 of those events individually. So that I feel like it does constitute as a quick recap overall. And
well, real quick,
take a
huge
breath.
shout out to Gavin Cunningham, who took 3rd, racking off a 9 down, birdieing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 in a row in the center of that round.
Damn.
Bookmarked it with 2 bogeys and a couple elder birdies in there, but just looked like that was the hot round, a 10:52 to jump himself 16 spots up the leaderboard to get into third place, tied with Ross Kimbrell, who had a hole-in-one as well on a 442-foot hole 11. Congratulations to Ross, who kind of stayed right there in third place. So ultimately, really exciting golf. I can't wait till that. Maybe it's already out. Is that footage already out? I don't know.
Yeah, the USAM footage.
Okay, great.
I believe there again, it was part of the gatekeeper crew that worked with the PDGA. I think Nathan Queen and Grant Zellner did some commentary on it, and I believe all of that is out and available as well. PDGA Media, again, the place to be.
The place to be. How much do they pay you for saying that?
Not enough. That's actually
they should
a good
pay
point.
You more.
They should. What I will also follow that up with is I don't remember. Just to put it out there, and I think if you're a Smasher, you probably already know this, but just for some housekeeping, there is not live coverage, and there will not be live coverage coming to you from the Masters Worlds. I've seen a number of people ask for it. Again, that's part of the bar that overall continues to get raised within disc golf media. However, there's just not the justification. I love these people. That's why I'm here. I love all of our age-protected disc golfers and then some. And I know there's dozens or hundreds maybe of you that also say you love it and you want to watch it. Unfortunately, that math doesn't math. And the tens of thousands of dollars and then some to pull off a solid broadcast for what I believe would be the viewership. I think it's just business decisions. And I don't know if that's going to change for many years to come. I mean, let's face it, if you look at even just post-production, the viewership isn't there. And that's no dismissal. I'm here to help it, but that's no dismissal of the players or the caliber of the people or anything of that nature. But if people aren't watching it, it does not justify then investing yet even more money in hopes that people will then show up and watch it. And so, yeah, just to put that out there, there may be a Facebook Live here or there or something of that nature, but there is no massive production that is overall putting on a live broadcast here of the Masters Worlds. And I know some of you are clamoring for it. The problem is that some needs to turn into tens of thousands of you. And until it does, I think that's going to be the game plan moving forward. I'm just speaking from what I think. That's in no official PDGA or DGN or DGPT or Champions Landing or any other. I'm just speaking from what I believe to be the case there.
The only other news that really came out from the PDGA this week was the preview for the proposed rule changes for 2025. There's some interesting things in there that if you want to go ahead and look at. Timeouts allowed now. Not allowed yet, but previewed. Possibly giving the player 2 timeouts that allow them up to 60 seconds to throw as opposed to 30 for places, big decisions, rough lies, things of that nature. Our second round lead card for MPO got a time warning from a marshal. So it was known. It had Calvin, AJ Carey, Matt Bell, and was it Ezra? I don't exactly remember for sure, but it was a slow card. I didn't time anybody to see if anyone was over their 30 seconds, but the entire card itself was taking glacial pace because there were a few players that they made sure if they didn't use all 30 of their seconds on a lot of them, the production crew didn't mind as much because we could squeeze in a lot of extra shots on other cards, but ultimately when you start falling 4, 5, 6 holes back, someone's got to say something. So that's what happened on the second card or on the second day of the lead card of MPO. So
interesting. And which is so funny because I can only imagine the comments that come with, who cares? They're the last card. They're not holding anyone up. And what I would say to that, because I'm sure somebody said that, I would say that's not the point. They should not be awarded unlimited time, so to speak, and or have less regard for the rules just because they're the final card. So I'm sure it was a awkward and or tough decision for a marshal to even make, because let's be real, we talk about all the time how players don't want that dynamic on their card of calling it any awkwardness or retaliation or anything of that nature. Even a marshal, there's no marshal, well, maybe there's one, but there's mostly no marshals that want to walk up to a group and give them a warning. I was going to say subjective. It's really not. To walk up to them and give them a warning. No marshal enjoys that role either. Because it's a form of discipline in a light sense, and I can't imagine that they like that either. So, real quick, what I'll say about that time warning, I kind of love it. I feel like that's a very fair compromise. I'd have to read more about it. I only saw, just one little highlighted cliff note about it. As someone else maybe suggested online today, has said with those two offerings, those two timeouts, extensions is, I guess, the word I keep thinking of in terms of like billiards. With those two timeouts or extensions or whatever you want to call it, will that make it easier to call on all the times where players are exceeding? Because it's like, hey, you have an opportunity, what they are ahead of time, and you could use them, and you chose not to, so you're still breaking a rule, even if you did have a quote unquote get out of jail free or a pass here. Obviously, I think there's going to have to be a conversation if it does happen. Is that adjusted for any rounds, even though on the Pro Tour we don't see them, but any rounds that are more than 18 holes? If you're playing a 21-hole course, a 24-hole course, dare I say a 27-hole course, which some still get played in tournaments at lower levels, and then in a playoff scenario, dare I ask, is there any adjustment there when you head to a playoff scenario? As we all know, playoffs can be one hole aggregate. Now they can be aggregate, which guarantees at least 2 or 3 holes, or a playoff could go 9 holes. Same thing. So if you expand on that, and that's for another conversation for another day, there is some thought that needs to go into that. So
some of the other things, and the thing that I think is going to get the most maybe confused by people is the new option to expand the use of video evidence to course markings. So what this means is that you are allowed to take a picture and show the tournament director things like course markings to define if something is OB, as in, like, is this area OB? Is this tee box? Like, you can't show a picture of the disc on the line and ask. You can't show, like, it is different. It says here, clarify the meaning of course markings that indicate teeing areas under 802.04a, restricted routes under 804.01, regulated areas under 806, or drop zones. This includes clarifying that a marking on the course is not relevant to competition. So just to clarify, like, does this mean, like, is this log really supposed to be OB, or is it just a log? That type of thing.
Yeah.
But you cannot send video evidence of times, jump putts, OB discs, things of that nature yet. But I think that's going to get confused by people when they start reading that video evidence is allowed. So TDs now with for players that do not have PDJ numbers are going. I keep saying going like these are already set in stone. They're not. Will be allowed to pick the appropriate division. So if Terry knows that someone who plays at 13 under par, always at this course because he's in leagues, shows up for the tournament, wants to play MA3, Terry's gonna look at him and go, no, I don't think so. You have to play in this division or you don't play. So because to address member concerns about sandbagging by non-members. So there's something in here about true amateur status. By bringing standalone document into the competition manual. You can read over that. Restrooms are now required at C tiers and above, or will be required at C tiers and above.
Yeah, Kathy Hardiman, catnip, as we talked about her earlier. When I saw her at the disc stamping process, she wanted to take credit for making that suggestion, and I'm sure she's not the only one.
Yeah.
clearly, as a TD myself, it adds in an additional challenge, but yet seems like a very appropriate one at that. It adds in definitely a different element or two when you're talking about hosting an event. And when it's all said and done, ultimately the idea is to raise the bar and raise the standard even that much more to make the events better. I think some people will really struggle with that concept, or not the concept, but the reality of it, because as we know, sometimes C tiers are one guy with 41 participants, and they're your very most basic elementary entry level competitive sanctioned tournaments. And that's not to dismiss that we should have restrooms, because of course you should try and have them, but that $100 or $200 cost may be in fact completely prohibitive of you running an event, which you could take as good or bad. So that's for a bigger discussion, but I'd love to see it, of course.
Of course, yeah. Another interesting one that I thought was kind of funny, clarifying the consequence for intentionally skipping a hole. You are not allowed to intentionally skip a hole and say, well, I'll just take a 7 here, or whatever that is. By intentionally failing to play a hole will constitute as an immediate withdrawal from the competition. So you can't walk up to hole 50.
Intentionally skipping a hole.
I mean, imagine Terry walking
how
up.
How often
somebody
is that happening?
must have tried it to say, hey, I can't clear this water. I'm just gonna take a 7 here and go on to the next hole, because I would probably take an 8 or a 9 here anyway. It's super long. I only throw 112 feet, and that's just not my thing. So yeah. And this includes,
I'm not,
but it's not limited to any deliberate misplays.
Oh, okay. So, well, yeah.
And they clarified
I guess.
Stamping, the methods of applying custom graphics to a disc. So I know there was some talk about people getting blanks and then applying their own stamp to it, and it's technically post-modified coming from the manufacturer. I know there was that discussion a couple months ago, so I think they're clarifying that. And there's a few other little tidbits in there in the competition manual. You can read it at the pdga.com, but those are the ones that really stuck out to me as kind of interesting, and those are things that we'll be able to vote on, or that not we will, but the organization, the board of directors and such will take note. So if you have any issues or clarifications you want, reach out to the PDGA and say, hey, did you think of this? They probably did, but you don't know. So please go ahead, if you find anything weird with them, go ahead and read over them. It's your duty as a PDGA member.
Yeah, it really is, because we all know that when something gets then enacted or gets applied, or however the case gets written into the rule, people will say, how did that come about? I didn't hear anything about this. Well, here is your friendly reminder that they are taking feedback. Now, just because you give the feedback, we all know it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to go the way you see it, but it's worth providing that feedback nonetheless.
Someone brings up like Webb Warren brings up a point about like the leader going with imagine a 5-stroke leader bypassing a risky hole 18. I think of like a hole 17 at USDGC, just saying I'm cool with a 7, walk into the next hole. Like I know it's silly, but we've seen people rack up bigger numbers there. But anyway, those are scenarios that they're going to avoid. So just taking it off the table, it's good that it's there.
I just also feel like it's so difficult and becomes so subjective when we start talking about things that are when you're trying to determine intent, and we all know, I mean, there's lots of crimes and everything else that goes on in life where intent is somebody's determining some form of intent. But I think about misplaying a hole, how intentional were you in doing so, and
I'm a great actor.
You intentionally
never know.
Yeah, do you intentionally miss a hole? Do you happen to miss that par 4 that you don't want to play because you instead of having a fair and reasonable amount of time to use the restroom, which is also subjective but good, but then all of a sudden you exceed that and it just happens to be on that hole. There's just a lot of interesting. But I don't envy anyone that makes those rules, because we all know no matter what rule gets written, somebody's got, that 1 in a million scenario, again, intentional or otherwise, there's that 1 in a million, counter to it. So I guess we'll see how those all play out. When asked, I know I hate to say it, but yeah, I wish it was obvious where it was on the PDGA front page
to find this. Yeah, it's
to find this.
Usually, I will go to
is it announcements?
News
it's
or
not
announcements.
In announcements.
I think it's in the PDGA Disc Golf News. If you scroll to the bottom, it came out 5 days ago. So I did link to it in our chat. So if you're in there,
chat, there you go.
You can see it as well. It's called PDGA Members Preview Proposed Rule Changes for 2025.
Okay. Where's that? Where's that on the? Where's that on the PDGA front page?
I'm sure it was on the front page at one point, but it's been 5 days, so it's probably rolled off the front page. You can just go to members or about and then news, and you'll find it in there.
Where's about?
I'm gonna punch you, Terry Miller.
Oh, there it is. No, I was being serious. I was getting a little frustrated.
It's a big blue bar up at the top.
I know. I was looking on the bottom. Okay. Yeah, I was getting a little bit frustrated. I have now since then found it as
okay,
well.
good.
I appreciate it. There we go. I knew it was easier to find a few days ago, but like you said, things have been buried just a little bit.
Yeah, we had a lot of news in the last 5 days. A major or 2 majors now that happening, and a NT or a Pro Tour event. Plus, this weekend we've got Turku, the Turku event.
Oh, okay.
So that's going to be live on the Disc Golf Network, and you'll see some of the. Yuli, I think, is flying over there. James Proctor is over there. You've got, I think, Antala's heading back over there, maybe. So it's definitely some fun stuff going on. Let's Turku over in Finland, the Turku Open. You've got the likes of Nicholas James Proctor, Lauri Lehtinen, Jakub Samarad, Unit Heinonen, Mari Vilman, Vaino Makala, Mikael Ham, Daniel Davidson, Jesse Niemanen, Silver Lot. All those top guys.
Love it. All right. Do you let's save the drawing for next week.
Okay.
And if you want to do an after show, you're welcome to. I've got a million things I want to get after.
No, that's fine. I'll let you get going. But I want to show you. We'll do a quick right now after show, Terry, because I want to show you something. Okay. We'll consider this the end of the show, and this is the after show.
I have to click on something else.
No.
Okay. There we go. Okay.
You see this, Terry?
Yeah, I see. That looks like are those a 9-pin? Is that what it was called? 7-pin? 9-pin?
No, it's a little more than. It's a little more than. It's a VGA cable. VGA cable.
Yeah, VGA. I got it. Yep.
My
son.
Isn't it
like a 9-pin?
No, there's a lot more pins in there. It's like 15 pins.
Okay. That's what it is, maybe.
A 9-pin, and you're thinking like a serial cable, but that's fine. So my son comes to me with this and says, and on the end of this there is an adapter. And he can't get it off. He's pulling and pulling and pulling as hard as he can. And he hands it to me. And I look at him and I go, really? Like, you're a smart kid. And I take it and I just unscrew it. And I pop it off. And he looks at me and goes, oh my God. And then he shows me this. The other end of the cable.
And okay. So wire exposed.
I said, what did you do? He's like, it didn't come out of the back of the monitor, Dad. So I pulled.
I did now.
And I said,
and that's the end of that monitor.
How hard did you pull? He's like, I gave it a pretty good pull. Like I like wiggled it and pulled it. I'm like, dude, he's like, I didn't know it unscrewed. And all I thought was
because you could like hammer toss with some of those.
You could like swing it around. I've done it. I've literally done it, Terry. And I was like, holy crap, kid. And he's like, yeah. And all I kept thinking is like, this is the kid that just got like a 28 or a 29 on his pre-ACT. And I'm like, you're not smart enough to unscrew a cable, kid. Like, you got a long way to go. You're on the robotics team and you couldn't figure out a VGA cable, huh? Like, okay. Yeah.
Well,
best of luck, son. So needless to say, he got a different monitor and it's HDMI, so it doesn't screw in. It just pulls right out now.
Wow. Yeah. I mean that is funny because how that also fits into this whole world of occasionally seeing those clips of handing a kid a Walkman or
a rotary phone
or a Discman or a rotary phone, a pay phone, or any of those, some of those, just think even about the days of an answering machine. Like,
oh my God.
how wild. And we can date ourselves because we're here at the Masters Worlds, but
Yes, that's
yeah,
okay.
an answering machine and what that meant to your life and to your communication is to having an answering machine. Also one that was old enough that it took a tape and that the tape wasn't full, in case you got somehow too many messages. You wanted to make sure that your answering machine, or that no one erased the messages that were okay. A whole other day. And again, our throwback. So, well, I'm super excited to be here. I'm going to try and find ways to. It's one thing to shoot the content; it's another thing to edit it and to get it out and have enough hours in the day along with these people. And I'm not whining, but I also love I'll admit I love the social component of so many just legendary people in our game that are here this week. It's truly awesome to see. And I'm looking forward to all of it. So continue to watch the socials. I want to post more on Instagram, because that's where all the old people hang out. But continue to watch the socials, and then there might be another live show or two within the PDGA media. And I say it all the time, I should have a live check-in show every night, and it may or may not happen more often, but we'll keep you posted with what we got going on here.
Well, as Ed Root says, Terry, keep up the good work out there. You're doing awesome. It was a great interview with David, so it's exciting to get to know him a little bit better.
Yeah. It after talking to him like we did, at USDGC, finally having the chance to get a few more details out of him. And somebody said I asked him tough questions. I wasn't intending to have them be tough or easy. It was just good to get to know more about what was going on, and I'm looking forward to it. So, all right, guys. Well, we're going to close it out. We'll have extra giveaway. We'll do more shows next week, or more giveaways, whatever.
Someone's going to get this cable.
Yes, and they'll know exactly what to do with it. They'll be so excited. Big thanks to everybody. Congrats to all the winners this weekend over there at the USADGC. As we all know, that's usually a great career stepping stone. Congrats to that whole crew for pulling it off. I didn't hear a single complaint, so that says something about how things must have gone over there. Congrats to the Beaver State winners and all the top contenders there. Johnny switching the show and being back in that seat. Knocking some of that rust off. So good to see. And congrats to everyone that's continuing to work and pull off this major here in Emporia. Looking forward for the rest of the week. So for David Hine, who joined us earlier, we appreciate that. For Johnny VM, the disc golf guy, that's all of your updates from all of those big events going on. This has been SmashBoxxTV Podcast 510. And next week, we'll probably have some World's Winners right here on the show. We'll see you then. You step inside the Smashbox.
Thank you to our $2 and above patrons. Your name is listed below in the credits. If you are interested in being listed as a producer in the SmashBoxxTV credits and supporting this and other fine podcasts, please visit patreon.com/SmashBoxxTV.